Okay, so let's start. So thank you guys for coming. My name is Oldrich Peslar. I'm head of legal and Rockaway blockchain fund, and I have a presentation for you about recent developments regarding regulatory of crypto. It seems that EU is aping into crypto, so I made a presentation about it. So today I will be talking about three topics. First, current state, like how does regulation apply to crypto today? Then I will talk about transfer of funds regulations, which deals with the travel rule, if you know about travel rule. And then I will talk about the most important topic, which is MiCA, markets in crypto assets regulation. And MiCA will be basically creating a whole EU level network framework for regulation of crypto in the whole Europe. So I think this is very important. So first, let me take a step back, and I will briefly explain how our legal system here in Europe works. So you've got national laws, and they can pretty much regulate everything if it is not regulated by EU, right? And so EU law takes priority over national laws. And you have two basic laws. First is directive. And directive says, okay, all of you 27 member states, you have to implement these laws into your national laws. It is not directly applicable, but the national laws implementing the directive are directly applicable. And this creates a lot of issues. For example, fragmentalization. The rules could be somehow interpreted differently. So that's one issue. And the second issue is it's called gold plating. And that means that directive sets a certain threshold for rules. But for example, in France or Germany, you can have stricter rules, for example, in AML. And that creates issue. And why? Why? Because crypto business is global from day one. You don't want to deal with 27 different rules. You want to deal with one set of rules. This process of putting laws under the directive, it's called harmonization. And then you've got regulation. And the regulation is great because it's directly applicable in all of those countries. You don't need any implementation, any transposition of national laws, and basically TFR and MiCA are regulations, and you don't have to deal with fragmentation and different interpretation from different regulators. So there are certain things that have been happening. So there were issues with tokens and stablecoins. So first question, and the question was, the same in the EU, in the US. Like, if you have a token, is it a security? In EU, we call it financial instrument, or a subset transferable security. If you look at the SEC, they were very aggressive about it. And the definition in the US is very material. That is based on a Howey test. That is based on SEC versus Howey case with the Supreme Court in the US from 1946. There are like certain 4 steps to meet the Howey test. It's very broad. So basically, a lot of tokens could be considered security. That's an issue. In Europe, the approach is more like, it's called black letter law. So it's more formalistic, but it wasn't clear. MiCA will solve this. I will talk about it later. Second is electronic money. For example, if you're issuer of USDC, you would meet the definition of electronic money under the current legacy framework in the European Union. Therefore, you would have to have license as an electronic money institution. I believe actually Coinbase has that license from Ireland, and it's fully passportable across the EU. And then the third part is collective investing. Some of the tokens could be considered like investment vehicle a collective investment vehicle, and that could create create issues as well. Of course, there was the question, like, if you're running a crypto exchange, do you need a license? Like, and that is connected to the question of the financial instrument, because if those tokens are financial instruments, you need the license of a traditional exchange, right? And of course, DeFi. DeFi is a headache for regulators and legislators all over the world, because a law is basically based that you're either granting or imposing rights and obligations toward a person, a certain person. You regulate persons. And in DeFi, who do you regulate? Like, it's very difficult. We talk about that later. So it's a gray zone. Actually, SEC, of course, they're pioneers regarding some cases. And there was this exchange Ether Delta, and the founder, Mr. Coburn, and he had to pay in settlement like $385,000 because they said, okay, you used Ethereum blockchain, you used smart contracts, but it doesn't matter because you had a control over the platform. Therefore, you were an operator of the platform, and therefore, you need the license. And he didn't have it, so he had to pay fine in settlement. And the last part was and is AML and CFT. AML, anti-money laundering, CFT, combating financing of terrorism. Basically, this framework makes different institutions, to do KYC and to verify that, the trade is not suspicious, the transfer is not suspicious. And recently, in the EU, we have AML directive, AMLD5, and under that, virtual asset transfers are subject to AML. So if you're, for example, a crypto exchange or a custody provider, you need to do KYC AML stuff on your customers. The regulation on this topic is getting stricter and stricter. So we will see where we'll go with that. And but the travel rule I mentioned earlier, I will talk about that in next slides, is not yet applicable to crypto in Europe. So transfer of funds regulation. So what is transfer of funds regulation? The first TFR was from 2007, and basically it consists of information gathering of people transacting on verifying the people, which means KYC, and then applying Trevor rule. And what is Trevor rule? Trevor rule is sending additional metadata between transfer providers. So, for example, if I want to send $10 from my bank account to Bob's bank account, my bank will not only send $10, but my bank will also send, my name, my address, where I was born, what's my date of birth. This is basically Trevor rule. And currently, the TFR wants to cover crypto, right? So basically, if I want to send 1 Bitcoin from Binance account to a Coinbase account, Binance would have to send additional metadata to Coinbase, right? So that is basically applying the previous structure, regulatory structure to crypto transfers, but to transfers between institutions. Currently, the proposal is in trilogue. So what is trilogue? Trilogues are informal negotiations between EU legislative bodies. So it's European Commission, which is like government, European Parliament, legislative body, and European Council of the European Union, also a legislative body. And they are like discussing, okay, this should be there, this shouldn't be there. And then you have like a common text coming out of that, and then the common text will be pushed through the official legislative process, first to the European Parliament and then to the Council. And if those bodies agree, then you will have a law coming out of that. And there, because it's regulation, it will be directly applicable in all of the countries of the European Union. As I mentioned, travel rule. So travel rule, sending additional metadata about the transactions. Why do we have travel rule? So travel rule is based on recommendation 16 of the Financial Action Task Force, FATF. What is FATF? FATF is intergovernmental body based on initiative of G7 countries, and the main purpose of FATF is AML, CFT stuff, and they issue various recommendations regarding financial system to combat money laundering and financing of terrorism. But there are several issues. First, it is not a democratic body because it is somewhere globally. It's international body, but they don't have a responsibility to their people that would vote people to the bodies of the FATF. And the second, if you don't implement the rules, the recommendations, if you have if you really lack in those regulations that should be there in place, you could be, as a country, put on a blacklist, and that has a serious consequence because you would be cut off from international banking. So that is very powerful. So if FATF issues some recommendations, the countries will then implement that either on the EU level or international laws. So that is the basis of the travel rule. So when the TFR will be applicable, probably in 2023 or 4. I forgot to mention that also these rules would apply to crypto ATMs as well. So if you have an ATM machine for crypto, it would be considered like same as if you send Bitcoin between Binance and Coinbase. So the good and the bad. So miners, validators, RPC node operators, they're highly likely out of scope. So that's great, but the language could be better. Of course, DeFi is not addressed at all. As I mentioned earlier, it's difficult to regulate DeFi. Pure P2P transfers, they're of course out of scope because if I send one Bitcoin Bob from my wallet to his wallet, there is no intermediary. So therefore, you cannot regulate that. So that's of course out of scope. I mentioned what is gathered. So it's name, wallet address, or account address, official ID document. Actually, this information, custody providers and exchanges, they already have that information. Like they already have that, and they will have to have the information for 5 years. There's 5-year retention period, and the information gathering, verification, and travel rule, it will be applied to all transactions, not for transactions, for example, under 1,000 euro. It will be for all transactions. But there are like two, there is wide discussion about this. So the first side says, it's not a big deal because exchanges already have those information. And the other side says, it's a privacy violation. It creates honeypot for hackers, etc. So I'm interested. Do you have an opinion on that? Do you think, do you feel that it's wrong? Do you think that we should fight for that? That it's actually a privacy violation, or do you think it's okay? Any opinions on that?
I mean, I would say it goes against the core idea of crypto, no? I mean, I know that the exchanges already have my info and everything, of course, but like you said yourself, I mean, when you centralize that much data into one spot and you link it to everything, then it becomes it's a free-for-all, right? It's so easy to, not easy, but it becomes much easier for malicious activity and stuff like that. I don't know. I am definitely not too for it. You know.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the technical. I think it depends on the technical solution because, there has because the travel rule or the system or the network for the travel rule, it will be a separate system from the blockchain layer because you cannot have private information on blockchain. So either you have like closed system that maintains privacy, or you would leverage privacy blockchains for sending information. And Coinbase actually developed a solution for it. It's called Trust, Travel Rule Universal Solution Technology. And Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, they're participating in that already. So I think, I believe if the system is designed in a way that maintains privacy and there isn't any particular honeypot, it could work and the regulators would be happy. So I think it depends on the particular, on the particular implementation of the travel rule on the system. Like if it's
It makes sense. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And at the same time, like if you transact between exchanges, I kind of understand that countries kind of want to have like some insight, like what's going on, because blockchain and crypto transactions, they are like neutral. Like if you saw the war with Ukraine versus Russia, Ukraine used blockchain for funding for buying stuff, and Russians could circumvent sanctions. So it's neutral. Blockchain is neutral for this. Yeah. Unhosted wallets. So there was this controversy. Basically, one of the proposals says that not only you would verify and gather information on the transactions between centralized providers, but you would also force KYC on unhosted wallets. What does it mean? It means, okay, if I send from my non-custodial wallet a transaction to Binance, Binance would have to KYC my wallet, and that creates that's super not good. I think that's privacy violation, because that's basically saying, okay, this is cash transactions and you have to be KYC'd for cash transaction. So hopefully this will be dropped. I'm confident it will be dropped from information I have. The second part I'm not okay with is that there will be a public register basically saying, okay, so these are not compliant, high-risk providers, and like central authority in EU could decide you're not good, and if you're on the list, other providers would have to stop transacting with you. And this is not okay, and I hope this will be dropped as well, because that creates I think it's unconstitutional, because this is basically a penalty, and if you're granting a penalty to somebody, there has to be a due process for that. So I don't think that is okay. Yeah. Basically, yeah. So please know that the TFR text is subject to further changes because it's in the trialogue. So the details I'm talking about can change, but this is the current situation. Okay.
Providers are exchanges, right?
Provider, any. Okay, so for TFR, it's any provider that facilitates the transactions on behalf of somebody. Mm-hmm. But the TFR also says that the infrastructure providers, for example, as cloud services or developers, they're in the recitals, which is like explanation of the law, says these are out of scope. So this basically targets centralized exchanges, custodian providers, basically crypto accounts. Yeah. So, and the most important part, MiCA. So I believe MiCA is the most important piece of legislation for crypto, like globally, because the EU has almost like 500 million people, and this will be applied to them. And MiCA is creating like whole regulatory framework for what? For issuing and offering crypto, for providing services on crypto, for market abuse. So this is big, right? So there was this first draft from 2020 from European Commission. It was in works. Currently, it's also in the trialogue. There is this 3-column document with all those different proposals. It has 900 pages. I went through that. It took me 3 weeks.
You are a hero.
You are, man.
Yeah. So what are the aims MiCA is targeting? So being fit for the digital age, have unified rules across the EU, global competitiveness. I think it's very important for the EU because I looked at unicorn from the US versus EU, and the result was not good for the EU, and EU has more people than the US. So in the US you have SpaceX, Facebook, Google, Apple, all those companies. In Europe, Ledger. Okay, so what is gonna be solved if MiCA already? So I'm very glad that the question of financial instruments versus crypto tokens, crypto assets will be solved. ESMA, which is European Securities Market Authority, one of the supervision bodies on the EU level, will develop technical standards, basically saying, okay, if you're a token, if you have these features, you are financial instruments, therefore you are under the current framework, not under the framework of MiCA, which is great. You will have a regulatory clarity, like what's going on. For founders, it's great. They will know like what's gonna happen. And actually, there are 3 features that are mentioned in recitals that could be in those tokens. So profit rights, governance rights, or claims on future cash flow. That kind of makes sense because that resembles shares. Yeah, and the second part was, you could see that in news, POW ban, like it was big news. So first, it wasn't actually a POW ban. It was basically saying, okay, if there are POW coins, they would have to meet certain sustainable standards for, to be able to be traded in the EU. That was dropped, hopefully. Fortunately. And instead, the text says there's a positive incentive saying, okay, POW coins could be put in EU sustainable finance taxonomy. And what does it mean? Basically, it's a labeling system in the EU. If you meet certain thresholds, you could be labeled sustainable. And if you're labeled sustainable, you will look good in the eyes of people. So actually, that's a positive incentive for miners to use renewable sources for mining. I did some research on that, and there is this Harvard Business Review article saying that the renewables are used between like 30 or 70%, something like between. So I think that's good. So I hope the discussion on this topic is okay, and Bitcoin will be ESG. Like, yeah. So basics. So there are a lot of definitions for crypto assets, service providers, stablecoins. Basically, these are asset-referenced stablecoins or EMoney tokens. There's different definitions for these stablecoins and different regime for regulating that, utility tokens and NFTs. So for the stablecoins, it's hot topic, given the recent developments on the UST Luna stuff. So asset reference tokens, the main distinction currently is that basically it references to some value, right, currency. And the EMoney token, I think the main distinction is that there's some portfolio ensuring that there is some underlying value and the token maintains a value over one official currency that is a legal tender. So basically USDC, USDT would be EMoney token. and when I try to apply to the definitions to USD, I think it's probably asset reference token, but these definitions are in work, so it could change because I think they should. They're not finished. They should be kind of fine-tuned to actually work. Then MiCA works with utility tokens because one proposal says that if you're a utility token, you would be out of scope of certain requirements for listing. But one of the features, obligatory features, is that it must be accepted only by the issuer, which is, I think, that doesn't work because it could be, accepted by other entities and stuff. So that I think the definition is not usable. And NFTs, if you're NFT, that should be out of scope too from certain requirements. I will talk about the requirements. And I also think that NFTs should be out of scope entirely, meaning it shouldn't be considered a crypto asset because MiCA is basically creating like financial grade framework for regulation of crypto. But do we really need financial grade regulation for JPEGs? I don't know. I don't think we do. So if you're running a marketplace for JPEGs, I don't think you should need like license for under either MiCA. Or there should be, okay, if you want to regulate, fine, but with much lighter regime than what's in MiCA. There is also a draft for DAO, which is very interesting, and it says it's a rule-based organizational system that is not controlled by any central authority and whose rules are entirely rooted by its algorithm. In its algorithm. I also think that the definition kind of should change, but I think it's a good beginning for such a for defining DAO in legal stuff. So if you're offering your crypto tokens to public, what do you need? So you either have to be legal entity, natural person, or some kind of entity, or a DAO. So actually, MiCA kind of recognizes that projects can be decentralized. That's cool. That's cool. Then you need a white paper with certain disclosures. Basically, it's like a prospectus for securities, but you will probably not need authorization. It will be just notification. So basically, you will write a white paper, you will meet all those requirements for the white paper, and you will notify it to authorities in the EU. It will be fully passportable. So if you do it in France, you can do it in the whole Europe. ESMA can, after the fact, can prohibit trading if they find out that actually, you didn't disclose everything you should have. So that kind of makes sense too. But what is interesting was that the offerer cannot be subject to zero corporate tax or zero tax on company profits. Basically, that's targeting offshores, tax havens. I think that's kind of interesting because I'm from the VC world, so I see all of those deals. And the majority of them are like from Cayman Islands, BVI, and they move there because there is some regulatory clarity, like regarding issuance, and I think when you look at equity raising, so if you have a company, you're a startup, and you're raising Series C, Series A, so you're issuing new shares, you don't pay taxes on that. If you raise 10 million, it's a contribution to the company. That's it. But if you raise through tokens, it's basically like raising for the company. But if you do it in Europe, you would have to tax it. So that's not fair. So that's one of the, I guess, reasoning. And also like value-added tax. I think crypto assets should be out of scope. Like explicitly, there are like decisions from the European Court on Bitcoin transactions, but it's the same with shares. Okay, shares are not subject to VAT, of the shares of the companies. So I think tokens shouldn't be as well. So okay, if you want to have this zero corporate tax requirement in MiCA, fine, but make the space better for the startups. So if you do the public offering, there is the 14-day right of withdrawal for consumers, but I don't think it makes sense because this rule, I think it stems from Consumer Rights Directive, which is like a general directive for protecting consumers when you buy goods, and over the internet, right? So if you buy a bicycle from the internet, you have 14 days, to try the bicycle, and then you can decide to return it. So that makes sense, right? But like, how can you try a token? There's a lockup for 2 years. Like, why? So I think okay, maybe it's gonna be there, but I think that needs deletion. But we will see. You don't need a white paper if you're offering the tokens for free. For example, if it's mining and reward, mining and validate rewards. Maybe NFTs and utility tokens will be out of scope, hopefully, because that makes sense if you're issuing JPEGs. Like, you don't need to do white paper. And of course, there are like certain requirements. If you, for example, offer to less than 150 people, or if it's under 1 million euro, or if you're offering to qualified investors, which is like basically professional clients, it's very high standard. It's like something accredited investors in the US. And there is one game changer in the annex. It's hidden in the annex of MiCA. There are big list what should be there in the white paper, and one of those items says that you should disclose prices from previous rounds. So that is a game changer, because how does financing of crypto projects work? So you've got team, some angel investors maybe, then then private investors come, like VCs like Series C, Series A, and these prices, they are granted. They are not public. They are confidential. So VCs can make 5x, 10x, 100x when the tokens are traded on exchanges. So I think that's a potential for different behavior on the market for tokens. So that's interesting. So stablecoins, asset reference asset reference tokens issuers. So here you have to be a legal entity in the EU. But actually, European Parliament proposal says that they could be also decentralized or be issued by an issuer from a third country. But in that case, some crypto asset service provider must be authorized to do that in the EU. So that kind of solves the problem. So hopefully that could be the solution. The authorization takes really long, 6 to 8 months. But there are some no-goes from my perspective. So European Central Bank, which is a body that defends euro monetary sovereignty and this stuff. So there is the proposal that they could have an option to ban issuers of stablecoins. If there are in some contradiction to monetary policy, financial stability, secure handling of payments, but I think the most important part is monetary sovereignty. And that could be I think the incentives are not aligned here, because you've got decentralized world with we could say independent stablecoins where innovation grows, and on the other hand you've got CBDC agenda. States will issue their own coins. In Europe it's called digital euro, and the incentives are in line. So if you grant ECB this option to issue negative opinion and basically ban the issuer, I don't think that creates a space for innovation and flourishing space for stablecoins in the EU. So I hope that will be dropped, or if not, I hope there will be like very certain objective criteria that make sense, for possible ban of the issuer. Then the second is regarding the arts is there's this proposal from the council that they could stop an issuance if it goes above some threshold. And I applied to UST like from May, and of course UST was up the threshold, over the threshold. So if there is some threshold, I think it needs to be much higher in order to work. Then there are like capital requirements, so you need 350,000 euro or 2% of your own funds in relation to the stablecoins you issue. But I think there are certain things that don't work. For example, that there must be a redemption right. If you have decentralized coin, like how can you make legally that you have a redemption right? I don't think that makes sense, and I don't think it works systematically, because if there is a redemption right, you trigger EMoney regulation that is already in place. So I think that should be changed.
What is it, redemption right?
Okay, redemption right is basically if I put you, if I have one of your stablecoins, I have one stablecoin, and I go to you, I have a legal right to demand that you will give me back I don't know, €1. That is it. Basically, USDC. There is a legal obligation to give you back your contribution, basically. Then if there are any reserves, the reserves have to be maintained by some crypto asset service provider, some custodian. But no-go, what is no-go? So there is mandatory peg to air or some different currency of a member state. So I think no, like nobody use euro on blockchain. I don't think that's the way how to push it. Hopefully it will be dropped. It doesn't make sense, I think. And one of the things I don't like is banning provision of interests on stablecoins, right? So you've got so many different applications giving interest on your stablecoins, and basically they're saying, okay, we want to ban it, and there is no. I haven't heard and read any like sensible reasoning for this ban. So I also hope this will be dropped. If you're a significant issuer, significant arts issuer, and meet at least 3 criteria, there will be like stricter requirements for you. So, for example, for capital requirements, so your reserves of your own funds would have to be higher, multiplied by 1.5x multiplier. Yeah. So this is it. And then you have EMoney issuer. So if you're EMoney issuer, you have to be bank or electronic money institution, which are big licenses. Bank is full-blown bank, so that's really difficult to obtain. EMoney institution that is used by fintechs, it's easier to get, but also you're like heavily regulated. The capital requirements are basically same. On top of the banking regulation, if you're a bank. Of course, there is this ECB right to ban an issuer, but again, it's in one of the proposals. The authorization will take only 3 months, so that's faster than the previous. But you have to count the time when you get the electronic money institution license, so it will be longer. It says that there has to be a peg to any global currency, so it doesn't say euro but global currency. And there's also the ban for the interest. I think it shouldn't be there. And if you're a significant issuer of EMoney tokens, there's the same mechanism, so you're under bigger scrutiny. So I think stablecoin regulation is super heavy. There are some things that I think could potentially hinder the stablecoin industry. And the decentralized stablecoins are not addressed at all or semi-addressed. So I think, it should be built about risks. So if you have centralized stablecoins for USDC or USDT, and if they are really compliant, there aren't any much risks because, I think you have to distinguish between collateralized stablecoins, either fiat or over-collateralized by crypto, like DAI, and between algo stablecoins type of UST. I think the risk profile is totally different, and I think regulation should consider that in the future. But in ideal world, I believe some kind of only reporting and information obligation would be great, because I believe that let the people decide whether they want to use it, but make sure that they have enough information. So that's on stable.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So if you're like electronic money institution, then you can print only 350K of tokens?
No. So you've got 350K minimal requirement for your internal capital, but when you print your stablecoin, it's backed one-to-one to fiat. So I will give you $10 and you will issue 10 stablecoins to me. So there is actually the 2% of own funds. So if you issued 1 billion, you need 2% of own funds. So the answer is 2%.
Okay.
Yeah. So crypto asset service providers, CASPs. So you need to have presence in the EU. You have to be a legal entity. The authorization is fully passportable, and reverse solicitation is possible, which is great. And that means if I want to be a customer of only US-based exchange, I can come to the US-based company and say, okay, I want to be a client. And this is basically reverse solicitation. And they don't need any license to do that from the European perspective, right? So that's cool. Another cool thing is that the council proposal says that if you're a bank or investment firm or manager of alternative investment funds, you can do crypto asset services, which is full legitimization of the space. So that's actually cool. Only 2 months for authorization from the date you submit the complete application. But if it's not complete, so it's longer. So there are 3 classes of services, and based on those classes, you need some capital requirements. So if you do just, for example, the advisory, you need just 50K. But if you're a full-blown exchange, you need at least 50K. There are various requirements for trading policies, for KYC policies, for disclosure of conflict of interests.
You need 150K just like in your treasury, or?
It's like initial capital.
Okay.
For initial capital of the company, you need to have this amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are a lot of I think it's highly regulated. There are so many policies, internal policies. It's financial grade regulation. There was one thing I was very interested of. In one provision it says operation rules. So it says basically that if you don't have a bank account, you cannot do trading on your trading platform. One of the proposals says that, and I think why do you do that? Because in Europe there are some issues with banking versus crypto asset services. Because, for example, here in the Czech Republic, if you're doing, for example, exchange or any CASP service, 95% of banks will not open a bank account for you because they say, we have our internal policy, we don't do this. First, I think it's illegal. Second, if you put this requirement into Mica, that could really create some issues. So I say, okay, let's leave it there. But in that case, put also in the law that if you're doing a crypto asset service business in the EU, and there is this bank for businesses, they have to open you a bank account. Yeah, that would work. Because I think this time banks are infrastructure providers, same as electricity providers. And if you're an electricity provider, they need to connect you to the grid. Really, and banking is like digital grid for our current society. So I don't think that's fair that if you're doing some part of business, banks can say we don't want to open your bank account. And I give you one more example. We've got in the EU we've got a basic right to a banking account for natural person. So if you're a citizen of the EU and you don't have a bank account and you come to a bank, they have to open you a bank account if you don't have any other. And I think this should be there. So either delete this provision for Mica or write into law that banks have to open you a bank account. So what are other things there? So I found out that like anonymous basically crypto assets are banned from trading. Yeah, it's hidden there, but I think it's there. So I don't see that privacy coins would work in the EU for like trading with centralized exchanges. Either you would have to use peer-to-peer and change it somewhere else. Then there is this text that airdrops or forked tokens would have to be given to you if you have 1 Bitcoin on your crypto account exchange, and you would receive, for example, airdrop for something, and so they would have to give it to you, not leave it for themselves like they do it now. So there's this intra-group exemption that is missing because under the current framework, which is called MiFID, when you're providing services intra-group, for example, within your group of companies, it is not subject to regulation because it is within your group. This is missing in Mica, and I think it should be added. And one of the things I think it's problematic is definition of reception and transmission of orders, which is one of the types of crypto asset service. That it's very broad. I don't think it's intention, to regulate miners, validators, operators of RPC nodes or non-custodial wallets. But the language is very broad, and I would, have better sleep if there is some explicit language on that we aim to regulate something different than this, because the interpretation of law can change. So that would be great to put a better language, explicitly saying these type of things are out of scope. So this is and the last part of Mica. So market abuse. When you have a classic financial framework, there are some certain rules for against market abuse. So insider dealing, disclosure information, that's regulated because there were cases in 80s, 90s, on Wall Street, they were trading private information and making money on that. And of course, I don't have to say in this room that what pump and dump is. So that's gonna be illegal, yeah. So there are a lot of things. So you have to disclose private information if you're issuer, for example. That could have material impact on the price. So for example, if there are like secret ending of lockups periods, dumping significant tokens on market, I think under these rules that should be disclosed to public. Then there is the prohibition of insider dealing, meaning that you would trade private information. Then unlawful disclosure, meaning that you shouldn't have disclosed the information because there are certain rules for the disclosure. and prohibition of market manipulation, basically, you know, somehow influencing the price, you know, and it is actually is not a good thing for the market because you're doing something immoral. For example, those pump and dumps. And one of the most important thing of this all, so DeFi is not addressed in MiCA, but the European Commission is working on something that is called embedded supervision. And they, in one of the materials, they say that could be one of the approaches for future regulation of DeFi. What is embedded supervision? Basically, that you would have a technological tools for information gathering and reporting on chain. So you would directly see what's happening, and you wouldn't need to apply certain requirements for participants on the market. You know, but I think that's the first step. You know, what happens if those participants don't meet the requirements? Like, what happens then? But I think it's the right step. I was actually excited that government, you know, thinks about that and doing research on that. So I think that's great. So DeFi and MiCA, I have a solution for that, because as I mentioned at the beginning, the problem with regulating DeFi is that there is no certain person to regulate, and law works in a way that you regulate person. But instead of trying to define who is the person behind the decentralized finances, you could now say which activities are out of scope. So therefore, you first need definitions of what is a decentralized crypto asset service. And I used some language for the DAO definition I mentioned earlier. So basically, it would mean the decentralized crypto asset service. It's a crypto asset service using DLT where rules of provision of such a service are controlled by a rule-based organizational system that is not controlled by any central authority, and where such rules are executed via a computer code running on DLT. The same approach would be used for decentralized crypto assets, with basically the same definition but applying to decentralized crypto assets. And the first important part should be said that deploying a code, taking vote in the rules-based organization, and provision of interface is not considered, you know, provision of crypto asset service or issuance of decentralized crypto assets. You know, that way you could regulate centralized services and at the same time create a safe harbor for DeFi and maintain some space for innovation that should take place. So if a developer deploys a code, he will know, I am fine. The DAO will take care of the management, and that's it. And you can figure out the way how to regulate DeFi in next decade. And at the same time, you would need space for the innovation. The second approach, I was told, could be soft regulation of DeFi, meaning you wouldn't mention DeFi at all, and you would kind of rely that regulators will not come after you. But it's a gray zone, because where is the threshold when you are centralized or have a control over the platform? That's an issue, right? So, like, why do we need to live in some legal vacuum? Why? Why can we have like honest discussion with legislators and saying, look, this is DeFi, you know, we should work on that. And if you kill it, you know, it's killed. That's it. So last thing, applicability and transition to MiCA. So applicability 2023 or 4, and then they will be like 18 to 24 months, like roll out, you know, transition period for current cusps to the requirements of MiCA. In one of those last provisions, it says that basically if the token is admitted to trading currently, you will not need a white paper. But at the same time, there are like other rules, and the drafting was like I think not finished. So So hopefully that will be the case. Otherwise, you would have to have white papers for every token that is already listed, but I don't think that makes sense. So I hope that will not be the case. So, questions now.
So, why is there like any particular reason why would you want to open like an entity in Europe? Okay. No, I mean, so like Binance, they I don't know, recently got their license in France or in Spain. I'm not sure. So why are they doing this? Like,
But you
why
can,
do you need it?
because first there needs to be like a point of contact for regulators. Like who do you sue? Who do you impose fines if you do not like do what you should be doing? So that is one of the reasons, I think. So, and for consumers, like if you're a consumer, you know. Do you want to you know, sue a Cayman-based company or France-based company? Like where do you think you would be more protected? Like yeah,
So
maybe consumer protection is the answer.
But in France, they needed to be authorized to make advertisement. You're not allowed to do advertisement in France if you're not regulated.
So if you're a startup, then you probably would not want to start in EU, or
Why?
well, because like there were some very high like thresholds, like 150k, like 200k. So
Well, it depends.
Do it like only if you scale.
It depends. If you're doing decentralized project, it's a completely different game than if you're doing a centralized service. If you're doing business in the US, you know, you are like money transmitter, MSB, right? Money services business. You need to have a license on the federal level, and then you need to have a license like in each of the states of the US. So I think there are some like requirements as well, right? So you're saying like where should you be?
Opening the entity. Yeah.
Huh?
So like the question like original was like if I'm a startup then and I want to maybe like test some theories, right? I don't know how it will go.
Yeah.
So maybe I would want to open somewhere else, and if it goes well, then I would want to go to the EU and open entity there and open entity in US.
Yeah, but if it depends on your project. If you're developer, why can you have, I don't know, a labs company based in Portugal, in Lisbon? I heard that they have good tax treatment of trading crypto there. So Portugal could be great destination, but yeah, I think yeah, it depends on your business model and what you are doing. I think there's yeah.
I have a question. How much of influence you personally have to the legislators in EU?
Yeah, so the good question, because I'm going to Brussels on Thursday, and I'm meeting with MPs, with other lawyers from different businesses from Europe, and we will try to talk to them and explain them like, okay, this is cool, this is not cool, and I think the most important thing is to have a dialogue and explain them certain things, because you could read news, and news are very superficial. You could read, okay, USD failed, Luna failed, and okay, stablecoins are bad, but this is not the case, because as I mentioned earlier, you got centralized stablecoins, and the risk profile is totally different with algorithmic stablecoins, and that should be reflected. And I think it's I think, for example, for us and for me, my role is to be a bridge between crypto space, which is like Wild West, and the traditional world. And if I can make it to be the bridge, I think that would be awesome.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I got a question too. How do you define where did you start the coin? Because what if I just right now decide to go to Thailand for a month? I start the coin there, then I come back here, and I brought the money, I brought the coin with me, theoretically, right? So how do I do? Am I under the regulation of Thailand, or am I under the regulation of Czech Republic?
Yeah, so that's very well. For example, so if you issue a coin, and offer it, so you will be, for example, targeting the offer to Europe, then the regulation would apply to, basically.
Okay, so
And if the coin would be traded, admitted to trading on a centralized exchange here, also, you know, you would be subject to.
European.
Yeah. Because the trading platform wouldn't accept your coin if it is not, you know, meeting the requirements. So
Right.
therefore, basically offering, I guess, on centralized exchanges.
Okay.
And active offering. Yeah.
Okay. So if Coinbase, follow-up question, I'm sorry. If Coinbase accepts my coin, and they are a centralized exchange that is also working in America and they're also working in Europe, do I have to meet both of those requirements?
Yes, because you know, because Coinbase, I think they're like distinguishing whether the coin is traded in different jurisdictions. I think some coins are allowed and some don't. You know, you've got exchanges that don't actually provide services to US persons, for example, because they're afraid of the securities laws, right?
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I actually write 2 articles on the TFR and on MICA. On MICA, I called it Silicon Continent because I think this is like great opportunity for EU to get ahead, and to take leadership in crypto, because it seems there will not be like any federal level regulation in the US. You know, SEC is rather super anti-crypto. You know, they're rather enforcing than they. At least it seems to me that they're not having like honest discussion with the participants on the market. So you know, I want my cut to be great, and I want our Silicon Continent. So last slide. So this is me. You know, you can follow me on Twitter. This is my email, and this is my Medium page where I post articles. I post tweets from time to time. You know, so if you're interested, follow me. And if you have like any other questions after this, we can discuss. So thank you for your time. It was a great discussion, and see you later, guys. Thank you.